Hello, I'm MegaNova, and this is Pillow Talk, the show where I talk about whatever I just watched or played or whatever the case may be. First of all, I want to apologize for not having been active for literally months because it's just been hard finding the motivation and stuff. But I will talk about that in length at another time. Right now, we have to talk about what I just watched, which is season 5 of BoJack Horseman. BoJack Horseman has been one of my favorite shows for 2 years now. When I finally sat down to watch it, because I just heard from so many places that even though it may look dumb, it actually is a really good show. So I decided, to hell with it. Fine, I'll try and watch it. And I binged the 3 seasons that were out at the time in about 2 days. I just pretty much couldn't stop watching. And it was great. And season 4 last year was great. And this season was also great. So, what I think I'm gonna do. Oh, also, spoilers ahead. I'm gonna be spoiling a lot of things. Uh, what I think I will do for a TV show like this, I'm gonna go. I just binged all of it in one go, so it's still fresh in my memory, all of it. But what I'm thinking I'm gonna do is I will go through them episode by episode. Uh, I'm not gonna be ranking which episode was best or how they stack up against each other or something like that. I generally don't like to do that because I just can't. And if I had to, it would take me longer to do. And I'm just no, that's just not a thing I want to delve into. But I will talk about each episode, the general plot of each of them, and what I thought of them. Okay, so the first is the light bulb scene. So we start off with BoJack. He is now on this new set of this new TV show he is in. Why can't I even remember the name of the TV show now? It was Phil something, I think. Oh, whatever. He's on this new set, and there's a couple things happening, as you would expect, but uh, he's supposed to be playing this kind of dirty cop who has some mental issues, and the house he is playing the show in is basically a copy of his own house, and apparently that was completely coincidental. Actually, the reason leads into a joke that is a callback to stuff that happened in an earlier season. It's pretty good. They do a lot of callbacks, but they never feel cheap. Most of the time it just feels like, oh yeah, they actually remember what they have done earlier and it ties in and makes sense. At least that's how it felt to me most of the time. Okay, but there is he has his female co-star in this show, who later on ends up being his girlfriend. But she's a bit tired of that her character is like, oh, one of her defining characteristics is she doesn't like to wear a bra, but she likes to be in cold places or whatever, something like that. It's something like, oh, we want to see some nipples. And basically she's kind of tired of that and feels like it's slightly sexist, and they do touch a bit on some feminist topics and such, and even though I have, let's say I'm a bit mixed on the whole feminism thing. Like, okay, I don't want to get too political, but I'm not against feminism as such. I just think sometimes it gets a bit out of hand. But I've said a lot of times I don't want to get too political on this, so that's all I'm gonna say on this. Although I will probably get a bit more into some of the later episodes. Okay, but she complains about this to BoJack, but she doesn't want to complain about it to the director because she's afraid she might get canned from the show. So, BoJack, being like he really wants to help, like he's trying to be better, so he's going out of his way now to really help people out with problems. So he mentions this to the director. He doesn't mention that it's from her. He just mentions to the director that that he thinks it's not a good thing. Just a sec. I'm not very good at remembering. Whew. I'm not very good at remembering the names of people, unless I've like seen them a lot. And I mean, there's new characters obviously going into this. So some of them I don't necessarily remember completely. Just trying to find a list of characters, but it's not helping me. Yes, I accept you do cookies and shit. For fuck's sake. Oh, Wikipedia. Will that help me? Gina! She was called Gina! Yeah. So Gina is his co-star in this TV show. Again, I don't... Why can I not remember the name of the show within the show? Okay, it doesn't matter. The name isn't really that important. What? But yeah, they're co-starring, and he mentions this to the director, and the director ends up twisting this around into then, instead of it's her running around with very little clothes, he now twists it around to wanting it to be her not having any clothes on at all, like just being full on nude. Then BoJack goes to complain about that again on behalf of her, but again trying to pass it off as being him, which the director then ends up twisting to, oh, so we shouldn't only have naked women in the show, we should also have some nudity for the ladies. So you are going to be naked too. We're going to have you stand on a little stool, putting in a light bulb while you turn your entire body. Which BoJack rightly calls out, like, that just seems stupid and impractical. Why would I do that? Oh, it's part of my vision. No, that's how it always is, right? The vision. Bullshit like that. But yeah, that's just how it is. And that's basically the main stuff that happens in that episode. Okay. So, episode 2. The dog days are over. So, at the end of season 4, Diana and Mr. Peanut Butter, they got divorced. And this episode is basically her trying to deal with the divorce by trying to visit Vietnam, where she's well, technically she's not originally from there, her parents are from there. But yet she wants to, try and discover her heritage and stuff like that. And it's all framed in one of her online articles that she is like 10 reasons why you should visit Vietnam. And you know how usually those kind of articles, they're like super vague about why you should do it. No, this is very specific to her situation. Oh, you've just become single. Which obviously doesn't apply to everyone. And, well, some of them are a bit vague. It's like, oh, you should go to discover yourself or get out of your routine. Like, some of them are a bit vague, but then some of the others, as I said, they are like super specific to her, and I think that's kind of funny. But nothing really important happens in this episode. It's mostly just her, about her, trip to there. And that's mostly it. Planned obsolescence. Okay, so yeah, this is the episode where Todd and Yolanda, that's his asexual girlfriend, she finally wants him to meet her parents. And also the other plot going on is that after Mr. Peanut Butter and Diana has finally signed those divorce papers and such, now Mr. Peanut Butter is dating another girl. This pug girl waitress who was waiting on them when they were having their post-divorce post-divorce night out. I'm not sure how that was, but they were all like, oh, we are totally the best divorced couple ever, and we can totally do this, and it's all fine. And it's not fine, because yeah, usually that just doesn't work, and yeah, it's, you just don't even bother trying. It's just not worth it. Most of the time, anyways. Some can make it work. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying most of the time it does not work out well for anyone involved. Okay, but yeah, they had been trying and that didn't really work very well. But Todd and Yolanda, they go to Yolanda's parents, who, like, her dad writes these award-winning erotic novels. His mom is a porn star, and her sister is just like the school slut. So, like, everybody in her family are super sexual, and she's asexual, so, yeah. And a lot of hijinks happens while he's there. And, yeah, that basically ends up in Todd and Yolanda breaking up. Because Todd is just like, well, he finally realizes the only thing they have in common is the fact that they're asexual. They don't fit each other in any other way. At all. And I feel like that's a pretty good message, because you can't build a relationship based on that you have one thing in common. That just doesn't work. There has to be more there. Or else it's just, yeah, no, that just doesn't work. Like, I had a relationship once where the main thing we had in common was that we both really liked sex, and we were both really big fans of Disney. And that's about as far as it goes. I mean, okay, there was a little overlap with music, but like, technically we both liked metal, but the kind of bands she were into wasn't the kind of bands I was into. And yeah, it was a whole thing. I'm not gonna get too deep into that. But yeah, that obviously didn't work out. Also, because I'm still single now. Although that was one of my earlier relationships. But now we're not talking about my bullshit. Ah, yeah. BoJack the Feminist. Oh boy. This was one of the episodes I was afraid would get a bit heavy-handed. And sometimes it felt like it was a bit heavy-handed, but then they kind of reeled it back. Not in like a cowardly way, as in they could have said something but didn't. But it's more like they don't want to preach. What they do is basically just they present that this is a thing that exists, and it's not always good, but it's not always bad. Like, it's kind of neutral. Like, feminism on its own isn't a bad thing, but as I always say with everything, it always gets bad when you get extremists involved. Like, everything, I know this is a bit of, will sound kind of hypocritical, but everything gets bad if you get extreme with it. And I know it's kind of like the whole Jedi only a Sith deals in absolutes. Like, it's a bit of an oxymoron. Or not a... No, I don't think oxymoron, but it's self-defeating, I think is the right term. Because it's, yeah, it's like never say never. You just said never. Okay, never mind. But yeah, basically what happens here is that there's this one actor who, like, 5 years ago had this scandal happen with him, and everybody hates him, and apparently, as you find out throughout the episode, a lot of scandals happened with him over time. Like, he had done a lot of shit. Apparently, he had even done some sexting to a 12-year-old, and like it was some pretty fucked up shit. And well, basically the thing is, he's trying to get on the same TV show as BoJack, and what happens is they have this before all that they have this award show that is the what is it, the Filbert was what the show was called. Yes, They have these awards that are basically like the forgivies or something like that. Like, it's basically like, oh, you get forgiven for the shit you've done in the past, and now you can try again anew and see where it goes. And he basically gets this forgivey and whatever it was called, and he then wants to get on to Filbert. Because, of course, it's the talk of the town. Everybody's all up in arms about, oh, Filbert, and it's BoJack Horseman's new project, and yada, yada, yada. But, at the ceremony, BoJack, he eats some bad cheese. So, at the moment he receives his award, somebody takes a picture of BoJack while everybody else are clapping, while he's making like a face because of the cheese. And BoJack, of course, he's like, yeah, I don't really care. Like, fuck it. Who gives a damn? But everybody's all upset, like, oh, he did. It's gotta be because he's conscious about all the bullshit that this dude has done in the past. So, really, and then he goes on a talk show and he tries to be all male feminist woke bullshit. Like, basically this episode calls out male feminists in particular, which I thought was pretty funny. And how a lot of male feminists end up being very disingenuous. And yeah, and basically, they are doing it just for their own sake, not because they actually care about the movement. They just want a better name for themselves. Oh yeah, and the B plot going on in this episode is Mr. Peanut Butter, who has gotten a role on Filbert as BoJack's partner. But he has to be this, like, super tough guy. And he's not very good at that. He's always portrayed as being, like, you know, the super nice, likable guy, right? So he tries to go out and, like, toughen up his image and make people think that he actually is, like, a bad boy. But anytime he tries to do something bad, he ends up inadvertently helping people. Even to the point of parody, because they kind of point it out. Sorta. Like, at one point he pushes two paparazzi into a dumpster, or into a bunch of garbage. And one of them is like, oh, you somehow cured my ear disease that makes it so that that made it so I would constantly have this clicking sound. And the other guy is, oh, you fixed my eye, now I can actually see properly, blah, blah. And he goes into this super tough bar wearing this leather outfit that looks like something Michael Jackson wore at some point. It's like this red leather outfit. And he goes in there and it's all like, and ends up telling them about some news about a politician or whatever. About the new sheriff in the area. And they're like, oh, thank you for keeping us up to date on current events. And it's just like, yeah, they know how dumb this premise is, and they're just playing with it. And yeah, that's basically the gist of that episode. Okay, episode 5. The Amelia Earhart story. Okay, so this episode is all about Princess Caroline. And how she wants to adopt because she can't have kids of her own. because she simply can't get pregnant, as we found out in the last episode. I think I'm pretty sure that was an episode in season 4 that we found out that she basically is infertile. So she's trying to adopt, and this is where you see her trying to get into all this adoption stuff, while you're seeing all these you're seeing these flashbacks to her past. So we're finally getting a bunch of backstory on Princess Carolyn. Basically, her mom was this, like, drunkard who couldn't take care of herself and needed her kids to take care of her. And everybody else in the family are also super fucked up in various ways. And she's dating this Fox guy, which ends up getting her pregnant. And then when and he then has to talk to his dad about that. And he is all like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, this is fine, just as long as you do all of these steps that I say that you should. You're gonna get married, and you have to name the child this depending on what gender it's gonna be, and blah 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 blah, all that crap. And then she ends up having, I didn't really catch if she actually had a miscarriage, or if she got an illegal abortion, or what happened. But she loses a child. Also, she had been talking to her mom about how she wanted to get into business college. And her mom was all like, oh, so you're just gonna abandon me and leave me behind, and, really being, like, emotionally manipulative and all that bullshit. And she keeps trying to hold her back and be like, oh, just stay here, please stay here, take care of me. And she just refuses to take responsibility for anything. But Princess Carolyn, as you know, strong, independent woman, she goes off on her plane at the end of the episode, and yeah, that's about that. Okay, episode 6, Free Churro. Now this is an extremely interesting episode, because the entire episode is just BoJack delivering a eulogy at his mother's funeral. He spends 25 minutes just talking about how he felt about his mom. Like, how he really hates her for all the bullshit she's done, but yet he still mentions a lot of her, like, really human moments. Like, there's this one bit about, at this, I think it was this yearly party or whatever, where she gets to dance. And when she's dancing, she finally gets to just let loose and be herself, and she doesn't have to worry about anything. She doesn't have to worry about her husband being an asshole. And even if he was like, oh, I don't want to be here, I'm just gonna go into my office and work, when she dances, he comes out and stands with a glass of scotch while watching her dance. And it's an extremely good episode. Even if basically it's just BoJack talking for 25 minutes. I think that's impressive. Like, it takes quite the balls on part of the showrunners that are like, yeah, let's just have one episode that is just BoJack doing nothing but talking. I mean, yeah, he's moving around and stuff, but that's it. Like, I mean, you could be super cynical and be like, oh, it's probably just because they wanted to save on animation, because, yeah, it is very light on animation. Not a whole lot of stuff is going on. But no, this felt like a very deliberate artistic. What? Why am I blanking on that word? Choice. Artistic choice. Yes. And I don't want to spoil the ending because it's actually pretty funny, despite all of this being a eulogy at a funeral. Actually, the description on Netflix kinda gives it away, but I don't want to say any more than that. Okay, episode 7, Int Sub. That was supposed to be Int Subway. I don't remember what int in this instance is supposed to be, but it is okay. So Diana and Diane, not Diana, Diane and Princess Carolyn, they have both been doing counseling. They have both been talking to to a counselor. I think. No, that's not Princess Carolyn. It's Todd. Todd who's getting counseling. Todd and Diane. But what this episode is, it's the two counselors getting together. Because in an earlier episode, when we saw Diane at her counselor, she was talking. She was talking about I have these other clients, but she tries to not give away their identity by not saying their full name. Usually, it's pretty easy to figure out who they're supposed to be. Like one of them is literally just Jennifer A. That's obviously Jennifer Aniston. Yeah. Oh. What would I say if I could speak? Jennifer Aniston. So, what happens here? Oh yeah, and Diane at the end, and that felt like just a throwaway line. She was like, "Oh, I wonder if she talks to other people about me in this same way." And the payoff to that comes in this episode, where we see the two counselors talking together. Where they are each telling each other about stuff that their clients have been telling them about. And they even use this episode to kind of make fun of the structure of having a main plot and a B plot going on in one episode, and how they will usually end up intertwining towards the end of the episode. Like, they make some pretty heavy-handed comments on that, but it's pretty funny. And yeah, they do end up connecting, and it's mostly about how BoJack he's sad about his mother dying, despite him hating his mother. He's still sad about it because it was still his mother. And Diane, she is not happy with the work environment going on. She was recently taken on as a writer on the show. Because BoJack basically talked her into it, because she was complaining about that so many people are going to be watching this show, despite it having like all the sexist bullshit in it, then are ever going to read anything she has done. So BoJack, he's like, well, why don't you just come on the show as a writer, and then you can get your own creative input on this, and you can get out there somehow. So what happens is that she is constantly fighting with the director, because he can't come up with a story. He just has hard writer's block right now. And BoJack, he's complaining about not being able to really get over his mom, and he's like, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it." Even though he obviously really wants to talk about it, and he really wants to talk to Diane, but Diane has these sessions pretty much every afternoon with her counselor, and then it ends up being BoJack finds out about where she gets counseling, and he ends up getting counseling, but he claims it's just we're just friends hanging out. Yeah, of course you are. Where he basically just spends an hour each time just talking about all his crap. And basically it then culminates in Diane finding out about that, and she's like, "Well, I can't go to counseling here anymore because I want to have something where you, BoJack, are not involved." And that ends up being a whole thing. And there's also this dispute with Todd and Princess Carolyn, because Todd thinks Princess Carolyn ate his last pasta thing, I think. Something like that. But they end up resolving that, because Todd is living with Carolyn right now because he doesn't really know where else to go. So, yeah, that's the main gist of that episode. Mr. Peanut Butter Booze. Yeah. So the main thing in this episode is Mr. Peanut Butter, he is now dating this girl. We found out her name was Pickles. And she's a pug person. And he's basically invited her to this Halloween party at BoJack's house. And we then find out, okay, that happens every year. And it has happened for like 25 years. When Mr. Peanut Butter back then, he was like, "Oh, we should totally have a party at BoJack's place." Because BoJack had told Mr. Peanut Butter, "Oh, I'm gonna be having, I can't go to your party because I'm gonna be having my own party." So Mr. Peanut Butter, in his infinite wisdom, who doesn't really take a hint, he's like, "Oh, I'll just bring my party to his party and it'll be double the party, yay!" Even though BoJack just wanted to avoid him and just wanted to be alone. But yeah, basically that kind of becomes a tradition since 1993. Which kind of comes back to the fact that Pickles, she was born in 1993. There's this thing about how much younger she is. And the main plot line going on here is Mr. Peanut Butter kind of coming to terms with the fact that he keeps starting to date these really young women. But the problem is they grow up, but he never really does. He just kind of stays the same. And yeah, basically what happens is they kind of outgrow him. He's just really not mature enough for them at that point. And that's like the main crux of this episode. Ancient history. Oh yeah, Hollyhock comes to visit. And she still has she has a bit of PTSD getting into his house because of the whole thing that happened with BoJack's mother, who who drugged Hollyhock there. And basically what happened, most of the episode is about is she gets all paranoid, and they have a bit of a tussle, where she then finds this bottle of pills in BoJack's jacket, and she then immediately assumes, oh, he's trying to drug her and God knows what. So she dumps all of it because he had been complaining about back pains throughout the season. So now he's finally gotten some medicine for it. She dumps all of his medicine into into the sink because, yeah, she gets PTSD. She basically, like, completely blacks out over that. And, yeah, it's basically just him trying to illegally obtain new painkillers. Because he's like, well, sure, a doctor prescribed these to me, but these are some pretty heavy stuff. And if I tell them, oh, I just happened to misplace them, yeah, they're most likely gonna think that I'm just a junkie who just needs more of a fix. So yeah, so he tries to go to Doctor Who, you know, the doctor we've seen before, giving him drugs. But apparently he's not really into that thing anymore, so yeah, not much luck there. They end up trying to go to an actual drug dealer, which ends up being a bust because that cat detective we've seen before, he shows up and is all like, "Oh, yeah, I'm totally innocent. I just want to buy some drugs here," and then ends up arresting him, and they then end up running away. But what happens here is they get to this fence, and BoJack just easily lifts Hollyhock over the fence, and he easily jumps over the fence himself. Which she comments on, and is like, well, how could you do that if your back is fucked? And then he basically has to come to terms with, yeah, he is getting back into drug abuse. Which, you know, never a great thing, never a good thing, so yeah. Also, Todd and Emily, they're still talking. Emily, his ex-girlfriend, who is like this super slut, she just loves to fuck around everywhere, but he's asexual, so they couldn't really keep dating. What happened then was that he was like, well, I still want to be a really good friend to her. I still want to help her. So he creates this sex robot that she isn't exactly a fan of. And he programmed it to say random sexual phrases. And yeah, that actually ends up becoming a plot point. Head in the clouds. Okay, so what happens in this episode is Princess Carolyn, she, why am I blanking on what happened here? Most of what I can remember from this episode was, at this point, Todd has become the CEO of this company that tells people what the time is. It's weird. But it's basically also the website that hosts the TV show Filbert that BoJack is working on. And also in this episode, Gina this is where the premiere airs. Sorry, just a bit of dirt. This is where the premiere is. They all go to the premiere party of the TV show. And it ends up just exploding with popularity. Especially Gina. Because everybody's just all over, oh, she's so great. And everybody want to talk to Gina now. And BoJack, if I remember right, he got kind of jealous that she was kind of stealing the limelight from him now. He wasn't exactly a fan of that and all kinds of bullshit. But yeah, that's basically what happens in that episode. Okay. Episode 11, The Showstopper. Now this, we get into some trippy shit. Because basically, because of BoJack's drug abuse, and because of his general paranoia and all that crap, he ends up not being able to discern what is reality and what is the TV show set. And he's trying to figure out, like, he ends up thinking there's this conspiracy and everybody working on the show are trying to out him for all the crappy shit he has done throughout his life. And there's some really trippy, wacky dream sequences and all this kind of crap. And it kind of culminates in him trying to strangle Gina. Like, what happens is they have this scene that they're doing for the movie where he has to strangle the character she plays. But when they say cut, he just keeps strangling her, and it's kinda disturbing and fucked up. While I wouldn't necessarily say this episode was the most depressing of the season, I'm not sure which one. Usually episode 11 is the ending of episode 11 in all of the seasons have been like super depressing. Like the season 1, we had BoJack go up to Diane at that panel where he's like has this speech about that he needs her to tell him that he's a good person. Season 2, we have the whole if I remember right, that was where we had the whole thing with Herb about how Herb has never forgiven BoJack for stabbing him in the back then. Then we have season 3 where fucking Sarah Lynn dies. I think that. No, I'm mixing them up right now. See, season 2, Escape from LA. Ah, yeah, season 2. That's where he gets discovered by his friend he visits in New Mexico that he almost had sex with her daughter. Kind of pretty fucked. And season 3... That's too much, man. Yeah, season 3, that is where Sarah Lynn dies at the end, which had me, like, super fucked up. Season 4, Time's Arrow. Oh, yeah, that's where we, we see Back in Time, where we basically, yeah, that's the story about how BoJack's parents meet. I don't remember all the details of that episode, but it ended up being pretty sad as well. But yeah, episode 11, The Showstopper, season 5, that was quite a ride, let me just tell you. And then episode 12, The Stopped Show. But yeah, it basically caps off with Diane. Her and Mr. Peanut Butter, they have sadly ended up having a bit of sex while Mr. Peanut Butter was dating Pickles. And Mr. Peanut Butter, he had earlier also talked about how he still had feelings for Diane, but they was trying to work through it. And they end up having sex again during an argument. And Diane, she's like, no, we're not getting back together. I can't deal with being with you. We had sex a couple times, but that has to stop. We need to just stop this. And Mr. Peanut Butter, he's all like, oh, but I have to tell Pickles about this because I don't want to keep any secrets. I don't want to lie anymore. Yada, 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 yada. So he takes her out to dinner. Which, yeah, it doesn't end well. Because he then asks her to marry him. Because basically he says like, oh, we need to talk. And she's all like, oh, but nobody ever says we need to talk when it's positive. And he ends up basically guilt-tripping himself into asking her to marry him instead. Which, yeah, his fourth marriage. He really seems like a stable guy there. But yeah, and then there's a PR crisis over the whole BoJack strangling Gina thing. Because, well, everybody pulled out their cameras and started filming that shit. Which, you know, not really best for PR, so they try to patch that up. But she still, yeah, no, that relationship is dead. Also, I didn't notice if the F-bomb was dropped at all. If you don't know, the writers on BoJack Horseman, they have this rule, they can only use they can only say fuck once every season. Because they feel like it's a pretty, you know, strong word. So they don't want to misuse it. So they have restricted themselves to they can only use it once when oh, they did they at the end of episode 11, after he strangles her, she says, what the fuck is wrong with you? And the main point is people they only say fuck in the show when a relationship to BoJack is inadvertently destroyed. Like, just there's no turning back. And if there is, it's gonna be like long and arduous, and it's not gonna just happen. Like, I don't remember if Todd dropped the F-bomb on him, I think, in season 3. And I don't recall Todd having talked to BoJack at all since. And if he has, he was not happy about it. So, yeah, that's also kind of fucked. Yeah, but and basically it ends up with Diane finally talking BoJack into going into rehab. And the last scene we see is BoJack going in there. So, who knows? Maybe he will be out of rehab in the next season, and we will see how that goes. Cause I don't think one trip to rehab is gonna cure him. Cause he just is he has a very addictive personality. And he's very self-destructive, so yeah. But overall, great season. Not sure it was my favorite season. I still think season 3 was my favorite. I think this comes right behind it, actually. I know I said I wouldn't be ranking them up against each other, but that's basically how I feel about them. But yeah, that's about it. Also, until I get a proper camera, I will probably start recording from my phone after this one. Because, the quality of my webcam is just so crap. Like, it's fine for streaming, where the focus isn't really on me anyways. It's mostly on the game. Also, I will be turning on my webcam for streaming now. To anyone who actually cares about that. And I will be streaming after I upload this video. I will be streaming me doing some pet battle stuff and spamming out some Warfronts, trying to get all the transmogs in there and such. But yeah, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you out on the high seas. Yar!